All right, good morning. The Iowa Utilities Commission is now in session. I am Chair Sarah Martz, so with me today are Commissioners Josh Burns and Eric Helland. It is 9 a.m. on April 15th of 2026, and this is the time set for the Commission's monthly meeting. At the end of this meeting, as normal, we will have time for public comments. Those comments must be made in person and are to be no more than 3 minutes for each person. There was a sign-in sheet in the lobby before the meeting where you could inform the commission if you would like to provide public comment. If you would like to comment, but you have not signed up, please do so at some point throughout the meeting. We will begin the meeting with a motion to approve previous commission meeting minutes. I move for the approval of prior commission meeting minutes. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. We will start today's meeting with a discussion on Safe Digging Month from Mr. Witzenberg.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I want to take time, first off, just to thank the pipeline group I work with as we go out throughout the state and communicate and do education with Iowa One Call. We just got a great group. And before every meeting at the beginning of the road show, as we do our 811 education, I tell them, man, we've got a great group we work with. They care about pipeline safety. And it's not just words, it's truth. People we work with on our group do a tremendous job. And I know Ryan Faber, I work with him side by side with a lot of things. Just a lot of great things have come through this group in the last year. And we wanted to give you an update. We came in last fall and kind of gave you some vision of where we were going to go and how things are going. And we do want to encourage people. It is Safe Digging Month. Call 811. There's a lot of construction that's taking place now that it's warmed up. It's free, doesn't cost a dime, and so it helps save you, helps saves lives, and helps saves fines and also bills if you hit something. And so we encourage people to use the One Call system here in Iowa. So I'm going to go over some slides that just kind of show what we are doing here and again, kind of the update. Tickets, the last 3 years, ticket numbers. The last 2 years, they've stayed steady at 681,000 submitted tickets in the One Call system. In 2025, it was 3.6 million outbound locates. That's flags, paint on the ground, cleared tickets. That's a lot of, even though the numbers went down as far as tickets submitted, the actual number of locates completed went up because there's more infrastructure in the ground. And so Iowa's growing as far as the underground infrastructure. Dig-in tickets went down a little bit. These are voluntary. No one is forced to report them. We're not a mandatory reporting state in regard to dig-ins. And so these are the people that have said we've hit something. And we encourage people in our education, if you hit a facility, just do that. It helps everybody know that something's been hit. The utilities can come out and mark. But it's somewhat of a decent indicator of the damage that's taking place, but not a complete indicator because it is voluntary. And then complaints. Last year, the complaints rose quite a bit, and which is good. I tell people all the time, I like complaints, not from my kids, but from people that are allegedly breaking the law. We want to hear about that. And we remind people as we go out on the road show, if you don't say anything, nothing's going to change. And so if you look at, again, 681,000 tickets submitted into One Call, and we only have 91 complaints of people allegedly breaking the law, it's not indicative of what's really happening. And so, but we also, as we do the roadshow, we encourage people build relationships. It's huge with relationships. And so we encourage them, if someone is a first-time offender with breaking the law, work with them, explain to them how the law works, what takes place. If they keep doing it, let us know. And that's where we step in to help the complaints. In Iowa last year, alleged violations, over 70% failed to use due care or pothole in a non-destructive way. And basically what that means is they're not digging safe. They're doing things, they're excavating in a way that's not in a safe manner. I spent a number of years as a gas mechanic for a utility here in the state, installing gas. And the foreman that taught me, he'd been in the crew 40 years. He said over 90% of excavation damage can be prevented if you dig in a safe way. And so we're trying to help educate people on how to do that. The other 20% are really preventable. They're digging without a ticket or they're digging outside of ticket parameters, either before it's good They're digging after it's expired or outside of the physical boundary. And a lot of those come from lack of convenience. We asked excavators why, and they said lack of planning. We also said, what can curb this? What can they know the law? What can help them follow the law better? And they said, fines, money. That's going to encourage them to follow the law better. And so we talk about fines. There are a lot of warning letters have been issued, but the AG has also issued some fines. The last two that came out, a total of $10,000. And as we do education, we do bring up the fine structures. We bring up also some of the bigger fines that have taken place in the last couple decades in regard to pipeline damage. And so education and outreach, we talked last year about some things we're wanting to get started, and we're just starting and where we're at. And so we're still doing the road show. It's gone really well. And so when we go, we try to cover a couple things: when to submit a ticket, when not to submit a ticket, how to use Ticket Talk. It's amazing how many folks don't know what Ticket Talk is, how to use it. It went into effect last year in February, and it's a great way for people to communicate, and it stays in the life of the ticket. We really encourage date stamp and time stamp as far as communications, and all the communication stays with that one call ticket, and so they're not having to go to their phone or their email or anywhere else. And then also how to file a complaint or start an investigation. And then we give them tools to help them, whether it's an excavator, an operator, homeowner. We want to give them tools that are going to help them just be safe, as well as if they have an issue, they hit an underground facility, what next, what to do, and what tools can you use. And so again, we're working on building relationships. We've seen those, the fruits of that as we go to different events at conferences. We see more familiar faces that come up and tell us good stories, and then also some of the bad stories. And we're like, hey, you can tell us the bad story, but if you don't actually submit it, nothing's going to change. And so we continue to educate them on the law and those tools. We've hit 10 communities in the last year. It started in March of 2025, the roadshow. We've been to 10 communities. We've talked to colleges here in the state. We're talking to a college next week. We were able to go to an ag land management conference. And we've been trying to get in the ag industry, and it's been a hard one to get into. And that was our first chance. Great questions asked afterwards at the lunch hour, great relationships built, and a lot of surprise that people didn't realize in regard to the law. So it really worked out well. We're also going to the ag farm show there in Boone in September. It's our first time going to that, and so we're hoping to get some more traction with that. And we're also looking for host cities for this fall and also into next spring for the road show, and that way we can just keep going through the state. Our goal is to just go back to the same areas every 3 years. And with that, we kind of changed when we speak. We wanted to change it. We went now from November until March, when a lot of excavation slows down. Otherwise, if we go in June, we're not going to get people. We go in July, they're going to be out busy working. So we've really adjusted the schedule to try and meet the target audience. We've been to 3 grade schools this year. We're going to 1 next week. The response has been phenomenal. The principals, the teachers just love it. I had one parent who was also a teacher, said, man, my son said he had so much fun learning about 811. And so Ryan and I just kind of tag team it. He not good cop, bad cop, but he gives the kids the answers sometimes. And we really focus on safety, and we just let them know, hey, we want you to be safe. We want your parents to be safe. And if you don't call 811 before you dig, there's a chance you can get hurt or your parents can get hurt. And so you need to call 811, your parents do. And then we go over an acronym. I'll show you that later as well with the kids. But we're looking for schools for next year as well, next school year. We got, like I said, the one next week, and that closes out kind of our speaking until fall. But all the events that we have done have been really good, and we're very thankful for the opportunities for each one of those events. We've, again, Ticket Talk really stressed that as we go out and speak. I talked to a locator this morning and about an example of a complaint that came in, and he said, this is a great example for Ticket Talk on where this can help, because everybody can see what's happening and what's taking place. And again, it's a two-way communication between the excavator and the operators. and it stays within the ticket. And so they're able to ask questions, give clarity, and anybody can read it. And so if I use Ticket Talk, Gail can read it as well. Anybody that accesses that ticket can read it. So it's a great tool they can use. And again, it helps date and timestamp things. And we've really stressed the importance of date and timestamp. We've really been encouraging people to use SoLocator. This is an app that PHMSA recommends, and it date and timestamps, as well as puts GPS and address, any notation you want on the materials, on the evidence, on the pictures they take, if there is a hit or mislocate. And again, we just stressing to them the importance of having the right documentation. You can have a picture, but if you don't have the right things with it, it really isn't going to help you. And we've also, this is an example of someone using a similar app. And this is an example that came from somebody that allegedly violated one call law. And they went through and annotated and said, here's the property in question. Here's north. Here's where we did our work. We weren't even on that property. And so just the importance of giving good documentation. And again, that's for excavators, for operators, for anybody in the middle, locators as well. And then we encourage them to use hit kits. A hit kit is a great way to prove if the hit was in the tolerant zone. And so working with the AG's office, we've learned that, man, having the measurements shown in picture is vital. And so we've encouraged every operator, excavator, and locator out there, use the hit kits, use them the right way. And that will help them. It's a great tool and asset for them, and they're inexpensive. And so it's a great thing for them to use. And these are the groups we partnered with. Iowa One Call has been a great ally. We've really built a great relationship. They help give us, when we go to the schools, the goodie bags. Iowa One Call donates almost everything in those bags. And it's great because the kids love it. We now are giving out some hockey sticks and pucks and some of the things in the next school event that we go to next week. And so it's been great to work with them, and they've been a great partner, as well as we promote the Safety Summit that happens every year in January. This year's Iowa Excavation Safety Summit went from 500 people the previous summit to over 900 this year. They had to move buildings at the State Fairground because it grew so much. And then Common Ground Alliance and Common Ground Iowa. Common Ground Alliance is the national group that we're a part of. I'm on the education committee there, but we encourage people to get involved with them. They're promoting safe excavation. Their goal is to reduce excavation damage 50% in 5 years. And then Common Ground Iowa is the local branch, and we go speak at all the events we can that they have. And it's been a great partnership there as well. And this is Captain Diggs. This is our school presentation. We have a storyboard where we go through Captain Diggs. He's happy here because he took the excavation, the 811 training to learn how to dig carefully and use Iowa One Call. And this is him before he took the class. And so he made a lot of mistakes in his digging. And the kids, they love Captain Diggs. And they ask questions about Captain Diggs, you know, so you got to think on the spot sometimes. One of the best questions was, I gave the presentation to some of the employees here at the IUC. And one of the employees, they had to be school kids. And one of them said, what's Captain Diggs' favorite color? And I'm like, you know, I don't know. I'll have to ask him. And then I thought, it's got to be gold. You know, that's what it has to be. And so we go over, yeah, he's going to find his buried treasure. He's got to call 811. And then he learns how to white flag, how to use the white flag. And if he hits something, what do you do? And so, and then we go over the acronym CARE with the kids. And it's amazing how that sticks in their head. And when I'm done doing the presentation, Ryan comes back out and he asks the kids, okay, what does C mean? What does A mean? What does R mean? What does E mean? And they remember it. And so it's been a great opportunity to be able to teach 811 to kids in that way. It's the favorite thing we do. Out of all the presenting we do, doing the kids' presentation in the schools is by far our favorite. That's all I have for presentation. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any commissioner questions?
Not so much a question, just a comment. I did attend your road show up in Osage when you guys were up there and you did your community one. Just kudos to you guys. I think this has been a great addition to the commission. I think that hitting the kids at a young age is a good idea. So as parents are out in their yard putting in trees and doing all these things, they're gonna start getting questioned by their kids on whether or not they did the one call, which I think is a good approach. And I was just with a friend this weekend and we're kind of by Mason City and they were doing a fiber project and he's like, why are there so many flags on the side of the road? And I said, because that's today. That's today's infrastructure. I mean, it's a rainbow of colors and there's just so much stuff buried and it's just, you got to do it. So I appreciate your guys' work on this. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Witzenberg. I agree with the early education. My kids love telling me when I'm doing something wrong, so I'm sure like that's the same for lots of other kids. So thank
so
you.
much.
All right, next up, we have Mr. Preston with a safety minute.
Hi, good morning, Chair Marks, Commissioners Burns and Helen. I'm Larry Preston, an engineer with the Electric and Safety Engineering Bureau. I'm going to provide you with a safety minute or important brief reminder relating to severe weather awareness. We ended March with Severe Weather Awareness Week, which focused on lightning, floods, hail and wind, tornadoes, and overall preparedness. And Iowans participated on March 25th in the statewide tornado drill that is conducted every spring. Homeland Security and Emergency Management Director John Benson urges Iowans to take 3 simple steps to be better weather prepared at home. First, be aware of weather alerts by signing up for emergency notifications through Alert Iowa, or use a NOAA weather radio or other type of alerting tool. Second, make an emergency plan and make sure your family practices it. Think about where you will go and what actions you will need to take to stay safe if you are impacted by severe weather. Finally, create an emergency kit with items you and your family will need if you must evacuate your home. In Iowa, spring storms frequently result in conditions that can be favorable for tornadoes to develop. So today I'll share more about tornadoes. A tornado is a mobile destructive vortex of violently rotating winds that extend from a thunderstorm to the ground, often having the appearance of a funnel-shaped cloud capable of causing immense destruction. Tornadoes are capable of completely destroying well-made structures, uprooting trees, and hurling objects through the air like a deadly missile. Tornadoes can occur at any time of the day or night and at any time of the year. Historically, tornadoes occur most frequently in July in Iowa. Iowa ranks 6th in the United States for tornado frequency, averaging 46 each year. An average of 800 tornadoes are reported nationwide each year. A tornado watch means that the weather conditions could lead to the formation of severe storms and tornadoes. Be prepared. Know your safe location. Be ready to act quickly if a warning is issued or if you suspect a tornado is approaching. Watches are issued by the Storm Prediction Center for counties where tornadoes may occur. The watch area is typically large, covering numerous counties or even states. A tornado warning is issued when a tornado has been spotted or indicated by weather radar, meaning a tornado is occurring or expected soon. Take action. This means there is imminent danger to life and property. Immediately seek refuge in the safest location possible. Warnings are issued by your local forecast office. Warnings typically encompass a much smaller area, around the size of a city or a smaller county, that may be impacted by a tornado identified by a forecaster on radar or by a trained spotter or law enforcement personnel who is watching the storm. A tornado emergency is when there is a severe threat to human life and catastrophic damage due to a confirmed violent tornado. Seek shelter immediately in the safest location possible. A tornado emergency is the National Weather Service's highest alert level. It is issued when a violent tornado has touched down in the watch area. Call friends and family who are within the watch area to ensure they are aware of the situation. If you see a tornado approaching, do not attempt to outrun it in a vehicle. Shelter in place. Once safe, be sure to monitor your local forecast for the latest updates. Is a tornado worse than a hurricane? Damage paths can be in excess of 1 mile wide and 50 miles long. The average tornado is a 1/4 mile wide and the damage is 16 miles long. Tornadoes produce some of the most destructive winds on Earth. It is estimated that some tornadoes can produce wind speeds up to 200 miles per hour. In contrast, Hurricane Katrina in 2006, one of the largest and most destructive hurricanes ever recorded, had maximum wind speeds recorded at 175 miles per hour. Next slide, please. Tornado safety in the workplace. Homeland Security offers a few tips. Identify your shelter locations, interior rooms, or hallways on the lowest level. Warning alerts, always know who is in the building. Create emergency response roles with backups. Have a tornado alert system. Store emergency supplies, first aid kits, food, water, batteries, and a radio in all shelters. Train your staff. Ensure everyone knows what to do during emergencies. Conduct tornado sheltering drills at least yearly. Why is it important to take appropriate action? Being prepared can save lives. In the mid to late 1800s, prior to early warning systems, Iowa tornadoes killed 141 people in Comanche, 100 people in Grinnell, and 71 in Pomeroy. Tornado forecasting saw dramatic improvements beginning in the 1950s with Doppler radar. The Doppler radar allowed meteorologists to detect increasing wind rotations within storms, then issue warnings, giving people more time to find shelters. Between 1950 and 1995, there were more than 1,400 tornadoes in Iowa, which collectively caused 61 deaths, showing how early warning and actions taken can greatly improve the ability to survive a tornado. On this final slide here, I have some important links regarding weather resources users can use. You can sign up, have information sent to your phone, or provide general research. Alert Iowa is the Iowa Homeland Security Emergency Management website. Ready Iowa is the Iowa Preparedness website for severe weather. The National Weather Service provides a page dedicated to tornadoes and other safety. And lastly, you can find local weather forecast on the National Weather Service's Des Moines International Airport page, which is all the links there are providing. The IUC is providing these reminders to help keep people safe around severe weather. Thank you for your time this morning. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Preston. Any questions or comments? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Alvarado and Mr. Lovan will be presenting on RTO and federal regional updates.
Good morning, Chair Martz, Commissioner Burns, Commissioner Helland, Ryan Lovan here. I've got a couple happenings in MISO land to talk about today. I'll do my best not to take up too much of your time. First, I want to give an update on the ongoing DOE Emergency 202C orders. Just as a reminder, within the MISO region, there have been 3 coal plants hit with this order, which orders them to continue operating past their scheduled retirement dates. These are the Schaefer and Coley plants in Indiana and the Campbell plant in Michigan. Recently, the orders for the 2 Indiana plants were renewed, and these must continue operation until June 21st, which will be 180 days past scheduled retirement. The Michigan plant had also been extended and must operate until May 11th, which is essentially a year past scheduled retirement. FERC has approved that the cost to keep these plants operating be allocated and collected from MISO zones 1 through 7, which does include Iowa. And just as a reminder for the Michigan plants, they currently have their first cost recovery filing before FERC and are asking to recover a net cost of about $42 million for their first 90-day period. Additional cost recovery filings will happen for each 90-day period, which is the length of each emergency order. Next is a mention of MISO's large load working group. MISO recently established this large load working group, which is intended to encompass all things large load or data center related. This group was formed mainly for two reasons. The first is due to the large interest in data center issues, and this interest extends beyond the normal MISO stakeholders. The second is due to the fact that issues involving data centers may touch multiple aspects of MISO's other groups, such as reliability, markets, and resource adequacy. Rather than split a data center issue into multiple groups, this new large load work group is a way to keep things centralized. The first meeting of this group is scheduled for April 20th, and it will consist of some administrative items and review of new issues. The first main topic to eventually be discussed in this group is the Zero Injection Generator Interconnection Agreement, or ZGIA, which is basically a process for generators intended to serve a large load to get a faster GIA so long as they don't inject into the transmission system, hence the name Zero Injection. I just want to mention on this ZGIA issue, there are quite a lot of concerns from stakeholders and states on the timing. MISO is holding fast to wanting this issue wrapped up in June, but there's still lots of unanswered items related to this issue, which still needs some time to flesh out and refine. Next is an update on the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, Long-Term Reliability Assessment, LTRA. This report has been mentioned in previous meetings, but as a reminder, the LTRA is an annual report which provides a long-term reliability outlook for RTOs. MISO was and has been listed as high risk for reliability issues. However, this categorization doesn't really line up with efforts being made by MISO members and states to manage reliability. After receiving pushback from multiple groups, NERC has agreed to perform an updated analysis, which will include the MISO ERAS projects, which are resource projects expected to come online in the short term. The inclusion of these projects should downgrade MISO's risk category, and this updated report is expected sometime in May. Do want to mention, note that this report does have real world consequences. For example, the DOE has pointed to this multiple times as justification for their use of the 202C emergency orders that I mentioned earlier. Lastly, I want to give a quick update on a recent FERC item. Last week, a group of transmission owners calling themselves the Grid Acceleration Coalition made a filing to FERC requesting that FERC should either put a 5-year moratorium on competitive bidding processes in MISO and SPP, or exempt transmission projects needed to interconnect new load or generation from a solicitation process. Essentially, this complaint wants to bring the right of first refusal, or ROFR, to states. And I'll mention that Iowa used to have ROFR, but no longer does. The complaint boils down to the argument that the bidding processes impose unjust and unreasonable delays to transmission projects in a time where speed to getting these projects up and running to serve new load is needed. The group said that delays can add as much as 16 to 20 months to this process. They've asked FERC for a fast track decision to be made by July 16th. There's currently an open comment period until April 27th. Just wanted to flag this as a new issue that we have begun to follow. That's all I have. Before we move on to SPP, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? Yep.
Yeah, Ryan, on the large load working group, is that everybody that's in like OMS MISO combination, or is it like they selected folks to be on that? You mean for like leadership, like chair and vice chair? Yeah. Chair is Chris Plant. He's from WEC Energy. And I've talked to Chris and met Chris, and he's pretty knowledgeable. He's pretty involved in the process. Vice chair is Werner Roth. He is staff from the Public Utilities Commission in Texas. Sounds like two knowledgeable people on that. Okay, just curious. Thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Okay.
All right.
Morning, I'm Matthew Alvarado from the Regulatory Analysis Bureau and the staff assigned to Southwest Power Pool, which serves about half of the municipals and co-ops in the state. Close with the mic. So I've got 3 items here. On April 1st, Southwest Power Pool added 25 new members across 5 states. And so those states are Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona, Utah. Basically, this is adding about 150 new generators, 13,000 miles of transmission, and actually, depending on the time of the year, puts SPP operating across 3 time zones, since Arizona doesn't switch time and they kind of go back and forth, which is in time will be quite useful because everybody's peak hour is around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, but that's a different time as you cross the zone. So it should help cover that peak better as we build more connection between those regions. Also, FERC approved the consolidated planning process, which is SPP's has combined the generation interconnection queue, which had a backlog, and the transmission portfolio planning process into one essentially. And so this was kind of, they started working on this a little bit before maybe FERC even talked about this sort of cluster study scenario. And so that's going to kick off next year with the first iteration. And the goal is that, first ready, first served. So you can't put a bunch of projects in and just wait around and say, well, I'm going to pull these ones because I was only really planning to build one. So I put in 10 in different spots, and then, that was causing a lot of restudy and slowing things down. So this process should be very streamlined. And they're definitely upped deposits and securities. And do you have the land? Do you have your certificate? So it's a lot more rigorous to get in. Also upcoming at the second quarter regional state committee voting for you, particularly Commissioner Burns. They'll be voting on Order 1920 from FERC, which is all considering everything to do with having a 20-year transmission plan from which a project could be selected. That's never happened before, but it could potentially happen now. FERC is basically mandating that. So we'll be voting on that. One part of that was about public policy projects, that if there is a project that comes out of a public policy that would not necessarily require, would not, like the transmission to be built for it would not be required otherwise, then they're looking at some cost allocation to that state where that transmission needs to be built, essentially, like basically 100% to that state. So that's one part of that. If there's a project that comes out of that 20-year plan that's based on a public policy. There's also an advisory vote for the planning reserve margin, which the final vote on this will be for 2030 will be in next January. This is like a look ahead basically for 2030 and also a preview of 2032. Every year, SPP does a study to determine how much extra energy our utility is going to need based on the peak demand they're forecasting for 4 years out, 7 years out, 10 years out. So this will be a preliminary vote. Further information will come after the summer, and the final study will be done, and final recommendation for, let's say, the 4-year lock-in for 2030 will be January of next year. Also, the new commissioners and from the West will be voting on their planning reserve margin, because right now that's separate. And they also have some demand response and peak demand assessment forecasting rules that the RSC has already passed for the current footprint, but now the West has their own numbers and cap and megawatt cap and things like that. And that is pretty much it. Do you have any questions on that?
Questions or comments for Mr. Alvarado?
I don't have any questions for Mr. Alvarado or Mr. Levan. Thank you for your input. I sit on our Washington Action Committee, and there's nowhere else really to kind of put this in terms of updates. So I continue to be increasingly concerned about any federal overreach, both through agency creative interpretations of laws and shifting of analysis, and Congress now seems to be somewhat more interested in helping us do our jobs in a not so constructive manner. And so I continue to be concerned and increasingly concerned. And so I would just lend my support and encouragement to the commissioners on RSC and OMS to vociferously defend our role in the process. And I think in that matter, landowners, we are closer to the problem and closer to the challenge than those colleagues in DC. And so I would just encourage you to push as hard as you professionally can to defend our jobs.
Thank you, Commissioner Helland. Yeah, and Mr. Alvarado and Mr. Lovan, thanks for the updates. I'm just gonna, I guess, chime in on the consolidated planning process. I believe is meant to reduce that time for the generator interconnect study. MISO's got similar goals to reduce the time, I think, to under a year, where that's been 3 to 5 year process in the past. So hoping that they're very different plans. So hoping that they both succeed in reducing those timelines. But all right. We will move on to Mr. Marasco, and he will provide the litigation status report.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Martz, Chair Burns, Chair Howland. Excuse me, Commissioner Howland and Burns. Yeah. The first case is Enterprise Products Operating versus the Iowa Utilities Commission. This case stems out of a pipeline acquisition by Enterprise back in 2002. Later on, the commission found that Enterprise was in violation of Iowa Code Section 479B.3 for failing to properly permit 7 pipelines and 2 storage facilities, and imposed a civil violation on for each of those violations. Enterprise sought judicial review challenging the commission's order, imposing a civil penalty for each of the 7 pipelines and 2 storage facilities. The Polk County District Court upheld the commission's decision and order, imposing the civil penalty of $200,000 per violation. Enterprise appealed that district court decision, upholding to the Iowa Supreme Court, who then transferred the case to the Iowa Court of Appeals. Oral argument was held at the Court of Appeals on October 7th, 2025, at which time the court issued its ruling affirming the district court's decision. On November 18th, 2025, Enterprise filed a petition for further review of the Court of Appeals ruling. The Iowa Supreme Court has granted that further review, and argument is being held today on that matter at the Judicial Branch Building. Shelby County versus the Iowa Utilities Commission. This case involves a multi-party judicial review challenge to the commission's order of June 25th, 2024, which conditionally granted Summit Carbon Solutions petition to build and operate a 688 hazardous liquid pipeline through 29 counties in Iowa. On September 19th, 2025, Summit filed a motion to remand that case back to the Iowa Utilities Commission to reopen the record and to allow additional evidence. Summit is asking the commission to amend its order to modify the North Dakota, South Dakota route requirements and to change the diameter of certain segments of pipeline, among other conditions. During that hearing, the commission took no position on Summit's motion Oral argument was held on October 10th, 2025, and the court granted to remand on December 19th, 2025, sending the case back to the commission for further proceedings on Summit's petitions to amend the original order. The Hearth petitioners filed motions to stay, were also denied at that time. Between December 23rd, 2025 and January 2nd, all petitioners filed motions for reconsideration, which Summit resisted. The district court ultimately denied the petitioners' motions for reconsideration on January 16th, 2026. And at that time, the district court also clarified that the main unforeseen event which entitled Summit to the remand was the South Dakota's passage of the bill blocking the use of eminent domain for carbon capture pipelines. On February 13th, the Hearth petitioners filed a notice of interlocutory appeal asking the Iowa Supreme Court to revisit the issue of remand. And on March 16th, the Iowa Supreme Court denied that interlocutory appeal. So the case remains here with the commission to consider ruling on Summit's motions. On March 5th, 2025, the commission entered an order giving all parties until April 20th, 2026 to file responses to Summit's September 29th and October 1st, 2025 filings. Next up is Swan Lake Road Farms versus the Iowa Utilities Commission. This case arises from the Swan Lake appeal of the Iowa Utilities Commission granting of ITC Midwest's petition for an electric franchise for approximately 4.8 miles of transmission line in Johnson County, Iowa. The district court issued its ruling on September 30th, 2025, affirming the commission's decision to grant the franchise. However, the court also held that because the statute, which the commission relied on, Iowa Code Section 306.48, expanded the scope of a public road easement, was not enacted until 2004, and that the public road right-of-way in this case predated 2004. Therefore, the court found that the utilities actions constituted a taking for which the landowners were entitled to just compensation. Both Swan Lake and ITC Midwest appealed the district court's decision to the Iowa Supreme Court of Appeals. All briefs, including reply briefs, have now been filed, and the next Iowa Supreme Court will now decide whether to keep the case itself or to transfer it to the Iowa Court of Appeals and whether or not to grant oral argument. Finally, Hawkeye Land Company versus the Iowa Utilities Commission and MetroNet. This case stems out of Lynn County. Hawkeye Land is challenging the commission's April 17th, 2025 decision determining that MetroNet's crossing of a certain intersection in Mitchellville, Iowa falls within the scope of Iowa Code Section 476.27, and that Hawkeye Land Company is thus entitled to fixed damages in the amount of $750 for MetroNet's railroad crossing of this location. The IUC prepared and filed the agency record on October 23rd, 2025. Hawkeye Land filed an amended petition on January 21st, 2026, which both the commission and MetroNet have answered. The district court issued a briefing schedule on March 26, 2026. Hawkeye Land filed its petitioner's brief on, April 10th, 2026. And in accordance with the briefing schedule, the commission and MetroNet's briefs are due on May 15th, 2026. After all the briefs are submitted, the court will set a date for argument. That concludes the litigation update. Questions, I will attempt to answer those. Our main litigator, however, is preparing for oral argument today at the Supreme Court.
Thank you, Mr. Marasco. Any questions? Yep. Looks like you're off the hook for questions, so thank you. Next, we will go to, I'm gonna butcher your last name, Lishnovic.
Lashinovich.
Lashinovich.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna get it right. to give an update on Enterprise Products Operating LLC pipeline rupture that happened earlier this year.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sanel Chinovich. I'm the Pipeline Safety Engineering Bureau Chief here at the Iowa Utilities Commission. And I'm here to give an update on the investigation of the enterprise rupture that happened in Washington County back in February 14th, 2026. Go to slide 2. To give some background, the pipeline accident, which did include a rupture and an explosion, resulted from a failure of a 10-inch pipeline that was transporting liquefied petroleum gas or propane near Brighton, Iowa. And on the screen here, you can see the approximate location of where that rupture occurred. The pipeline, which is known as the East Leg Loop, is operated by Enterprise Products LLC and crosses through Iowa along its route from Conway, Kansas to Janesville, Wisconsin. And because this is an interstate hazardous liquid pipeline, the U.S. Department of Transportation's Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, or PHMSA, has jurisdiction to ensure Enterprise operates the pipeline in accordance with federal pipeline safety regulations. And as such, PHMSA's Accident Investigation Division, or AID, is the group conducting the investigation on the pipeline. Because the IUC has authority to cite and permit hazardous liquid pipelines, which does include the East Leg Loop, the IUC has additional information regarding the pipeline and its operation. And this can be found under docket HLP 2024-0014. And for reference, the steel pipeline operates at a normal operating pressure of 1,259 pounds per square inch gauge, and it has a maximum operating pressure of 1,310 PSIG. It was constructed in 1972 and was designed with pipe that meets the specifications of the industry standard for API 5L grade X52. And these specifications are available on the slide, along with an overview of PHMSA's and the IUC's respective jurisdictions. So the initial investigation was initiated by PHMSA's AID group, and with assistance from 2 of our inspectors, which included Paul Hansen and Eric Brown. And as a result of the investigation, PHMSA issued a corrective action order on February 17th, which was just 3 days after the incident. The order lists the investigation's preliminary findings, which included in a report to the NRC, which is the National Response Center, an estimated 2,000 barrels of propane was released during the rupture and subsequent fire. At the point of failure, investigators noted that a 4-foot section of the ejected pipe included visible corrosion, and also the 2 segments of pipe that were still left in the ground in the crater showed visible signs of misalignment. The failure appears to have occurred at a location that was previously excavated by Enterprise as well within the last 12 months. And the segment of the pipe was manufactured by American Steel with high-frequency electric resistance welding seams, which was installed with a plastic tape coating and cathodic protection. And additionally, on November 29th in 2016, a failure did occur on the East Leg Loop as well in Platte County, Missouri. The accident resulted in the release of approximately 5,000 barrels of ethane propane mixture, and the cause of the failure was determined to be near neutral stress corrosion cracking and adjacent to the EWR seam. The next slide. The corrective action order also included specific directives for Enterprise to ensure the safe operation of the system during the failure investigation. And these directives included that the 1.7 mile segment adjacent to the failure must remain shut down until the director of PHMSA's Southwest region provides written approval to the operations. So I don't think I'd mentioned it earlier, but there's another pipeline that's owned by Enterprise that's directly adjacent. I think in this spot directly, it was about 10 feet away from this pipeline. The portion of the East Leg Loop between Kearney, Missouri and Iowa City, Iowa is subject to an immediate 20% pressure reduction, which is to remain in effect until written approval from PHMSA's Southwest Region Director. Enterprise has to develop a restart plan before resuming operations on the 1.7 mile segment surrounding the failure. This restart plan must be reviewed and approved by the Southwest Region Director. And once operations are resumed on the 1.7 mile segment near the failure, the pressure is still subject to a pressure restriction until the director approves so. And mechanical metallurgical testing must be conducted on the failure segment within 45 days of this order. And a remedial work plan must be developed by Enterprise, detailing its specific measures to verify the integrity of the portion of the east leg loop between Kearney, Missouri, Iowa City, and this plan must be approved by PHMSA's Southwest Region Director. And additionally, a root cause failure analysis must be completed within 90 days with a report submitted to PHMSA. It is important to note that the issuance of the correction or action order does not prevent PHMSA from taking additional enforcement actions as they deem necessary in the future. The mechanical metallurgical testing should have conducted on or before April 3rd, so about 2 weeks ago, and the root cause analysis should be complete by May 18th. Once this information is provided by PHMSA, we anticipate that they'll have a more concrete investigation available. And we'll continue to monitor the enforcement along with any subsequent enforcement actions taken by PHMSA and related to this incident and investigation. And I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just one quick.
Yep.
Ironically, I have both of you sitting there together. So Mr. Marasco, you just talked about the civil penalties to Enterprise and how that's in the courts. And then I would look to you, Sunel, and ask you, is this the same pipeline that we're talking about with the permit issues that we issued civil penalties for?
Yes, this is one of those pipelines.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, thank you for the updates, and I'm sure we'd love to hear when you hear more. So
Thank you.
thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item number 4 on the agenda, other business items. And just starting with a quick update on the Commission's electronic filing system, or EFS. I just wanted to remind everyone that EFS now requires registration and for individuals to be logged in to use the system. That includes us. So it takes us a couple extra seconds to get in there now as well. And we just kind of want to acknowledge that's caused a little bit of inconvenience, but if you do have any issues getting logged in or getting registered for an account, please talk to our customer service group. Next up, Mr. Wolf will give a reminder about annual report filings. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Martz, Commissioner Burns, Commissioner Helland, and members of the public. My name is Marcus Wolf, and I am an administrative support assistant with the Commission's Customer Service Bureau. This morning, I would like to provide an update on the current status of both the annual report and annual company review submissions that have been received to date for the regulatory reporting period of calendar year 2025. For those in the room that may not be aware of the annual reports process, each year, all public utilities registered with the IUC and operating under Iowa Code Chapter 476 are required to complete 2 primary compliance filings by April 1st within the Commission's IUB 24/7 database. The first of these compliance requirements, the annual report, is a comprehensive filing covering a utility's operational data from the previous calendar year. These reports include financial data, gross operating revenues, and infrastructure-specific information. This data is used by IUC staff and the Office of Consumer Advocate to determine annual remainder assessments and to track industry trends. The second of these compliance requirements, the annual company review, is also conducted via the Commission's IUB 24/7 web portal. This process requires companies to review and certify their official company record. This includes updating company legal names, editing primary, emergency, and billing company contact information, and reporting specific data such as dual party relay service line counts each year. Both the annual report and annual company review filings are critical for the IUC to calculate industry assessments, verify contact information, and ensure transparency. Staff reviews these filings for any anomalies and corresponds with utilities if necessary, as submissions are entered into the system over the 3-month reporting timeframe. As of today's meeting, I'm pleased to report that greater than 93% of utilities have met their regulatory obligations for the 2025 reporting period. A few items to note. Currently, 93.73% of all required companies have completed their annual reports. These include annual reports from investor-owned utilities, municipal electric and gas utilities, rural electric cooperatives, certified natural gas providers, and wireline telecom companies. Only 6.27% of annual reports remain outstanding for total companies across all industry types. Additionally, 93.59% of all required companies have completed their annual company reviews thus far, leaving only 6.41%, or about 60 out of 1,000 companies, having yet to officially review and certify their company record. I'm happy to say that our completion percentage for cumulative annual reports and annual company reviews improved by about 7 percentage points when comparing our progress to this time last year. A couple more specific data points on the electric and gas company submissions. With regard to the broadly regulated investor-owned utilities, all have successfully completed their annual report and annual company review submissions and are 100% compliant for this reporting cycle. Staff is still monitoring and working to bring several municipally owned utilities into compliance. Specifically, we currently have 7 out of 135 municipal electric utilities that still must fulfill the annual report statute. We also have 3 out of 51 municipal gas companies in Iowa that are not yet compliant and still need to finalize revisions to their reports. Finally, we have just 1 out of 43 rural electric cooperatives that must finalize and submit their annual report. Staff will continue to follow up with companies that have either an annual report or annual company review submission or revision outstanding in order to ensure that the compliance requirement for these companies are met. As always, if any company regulatory contacts have questions or require assistance with this process, IUC customer service staff is available by phone or email. Thank you for your time this morning, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Wolf? Just thank you for the efforts. I know it's a big lift each first quarter to get all those in and do the reminders. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Next we will go to Ms. Toomeyer in introducing a couple of new IUC staff who recently joined the agency. Ms. Toomeyer.
Good morning, Chair Martz and Commissioners Burns and Helen. So I'm excited to be here today to introduce 2 new members of the IUC staff. First, I'd like to welcome Nick Rochert, Nick. So Nick is on our administrative support team and works in the Regulatory Law Bureau. So Nick joined the IUC on March 6th and previously worked at Wells Fargo. He's working primarily with our general counsel and staff attorneys and is already taking the lead as the gatekeeper of our commission orders, ensuring they keep moving timely for review and issuance. And next is Ryan Rush. Ryan joined the IUC on February 27th as Bureau Manager for Electric Safety and Engineering. Ryan brings 25 plus years of experience in electric and gas distribution, regulatory compliance, field engineering, safety, storm and emergency response, and leadership. Prior to joining us at the commission, Ryan worked 24 years at Alliant Energy and is also a 3rd-generation utility employee, as his father and grandfather were also in the energy industry. Ryan is leading our team of engineers who review all proposed and renewal electric filings, and our inspectors who work throughout the state to physically review potential project sites and existing infrastructure. In addition, Ryan serves as the Commission's Emergency Management Coordinator, which will involve expanding our emergency management procedures, our interactions with other utilities and state agencies, and helping us review our protocols and leading our newly formed internal safety team here. I'm going to turn things over to Ryan to say a few words about his bureau.
Thank you. She's explained the Bureau pretty well. I'm honored to be part of the Bureau, the Electric Safety Engineering team. Meeting this team, very talented individuals who take this very seriously. And so it is just a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Ryan. So again, welcome Nick and Ryan. And we look forward to working with them and helping support the state as well.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Tumeyer, and just echoing the welcome to Nick and Ryan. Any comments or questions? All right. Is there any additional business the commissioners would like to discuss before we get to public comment? Seeing none. So it is now the time in the meeting set for public comment. I have the sign-in sheet with the individuals who indicated they would like to make comments. When I call your name, please come up to the podium and be sure to speak clearly into the microphone. Reminder that all comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and verbal comments are not filed in the docket. So if you want those filed in a docket, you need to file those in EFS or see our customer service group. Commissioners are in listening only mode. They cannot address contested matters pending before the commission. And commission staff will be sharing the timer for your viewing in front of you so that you can keep track of that 3-minute clock. All right, up first, we have Marjorie Swan.
Good morning. Commissioners, my name is Marge Swan, and I'm with my sister Jean Rader. Jean Rader, we are farmland owners targeted by Summit's Phase 1 proposed project in Wright County. Here's what's been happening in other states that Summit has proposed its CO2 pipeline. South Dakota banned the use of eminent domain for CO2 pipelines. Minnesota has restricted the seizure of private property for private development. North Dakota District Courts ruled that the state laws allowed forced carbon sequestration are unconstitutional. And just recently, Louisiana State Supreme Court handed down a decision removing the possibility that private companies, foreign or domestic, can use eminent domain for the purpose of profit. We as Iowa landowners have already been through this process, the hearings, the filings, the litigation. We have invested significant time and resources, just like all the other landowners in this room and online. Now Summit is asking you to consolidate and fast track, effectively asking landowners like us to start over while Summit rewrites the rules mid-game for its own convenience. We have participated in good faith through years of proceedings, often at significant personal expense. We should not bear the burden of Summit's lack of planning. Under Iowa law, it is the commission's duty to protect landowners, not to approve a permit application that changes with the direction of the wind on a timeline dictated by the applicant. I urge the commission to honor its duty. Do not let Summit's corporation agenda override our rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Weston Grow.
Weston Grove, landowner in Guthrie County. I guess first of all, thanks for having the public meetings. Appreciate that. Concerning the amendment to change the location and from South Dakota and everything, I'd like to point out that the district court remand order stated, quote, based on the foregoing, the court finding that the remand under section 17A.19 parentheses 7 is appropriate because Summit has established good reason for its failure to present the South Dakota CO2 pipeline ban during IUC proceedings, and that the South Dakota CO2 pipeline ban is material to the substantive issue of eminent domain. There is no such ban in South Dakota. What they did is they banned using eminent domain. They can still get a permit. You guys specifically put in that provision, and you didn't specify that they just had to have eminent domain available in South Dakota. Still possible for them to get a permit. There's no need to go through all this other stuff. Next is the idea of the consolidation of the dockets. My property is less than a mile from the proposed pipeline. I knew very little about CO2 when Phase Fund was issued a conditional permit. Now Summit wants to consolidate all that document into one that's already approved. I don't believe that that should even begin to be taken seriously. I would also urge you to deny the amendment concerning the size, routing, and destination, as it makes the projects vastly different. If they need that many changes, I believe that they should start over with a new project because it's not even close to the beginning one. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to ask that we don't do applause during the public comment so that we can keep everything orderly. Thank you. Kathy Carter.
Good morning, Kathy Carter, Summit Targeted Landowner in Floyd County. 1915. My father was born on a small farm in western Iowa. His parents emigrated from Sweden in 1910, proceeded to raise their family of 6 kids on rented farms. Dad's desire was always to have his own farm. He served in the Navy 1942 to 45. In 1947, he and my mother, a Chicago born and raised girl who became an Iowa farm wife, purchased the Floyd County farm where I grew up, and it's currently targeted by the Summit Project. My parents, like everybody else in that generation, lived through hard times. The pre-rural electricity, the Depression, World War II. Tough times continued through their years on the farm. They nearly lost the farm at one point. My mother once told me that at the time, she was sitting on the edge of their bed, worrying, crying, when she felt a hand on her shoulder and the words, "It'll be okay." In 1954, they signed an easement for a natural gas line. It was a single-page document, front and back, completely unlike the 100 pages documents provided by Summit. Having lived through the years of heating with wood and with coal, my parents saw the bona fide benefit of that pipeline that would be able to quickly and efficiently provide heat for hundreds of homes. They would not be okay with this carbon pipeline. After 5 years of my worrying, I wish I could feel that hand on my shoulder and the words, "It'll be okay." You got it wrong in 2024. The Summit Project is not and has never been a public benefit or a public anything else for that matter. It is one thing only, a project to make wealthy investors even wealthier based on us taxpayers funding the 45Q. Currently, Summit is attempting to change everything about the project: the plan, the mission, the route, the destination, the use. Their requests make it a whole new project and should require a whole new start. It's time to correct that 2024 decision. Thank you.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you. Dave Clark.
Good morning. I'm Dave Clark. We farm and own land in Worth County, Iowa. One of our farms will be directly impacted by Summit's Phase 2 project. We are also invested in ethanol plants. The February 3rd announcements of new guidance for 45Z tax credits will be a game changer for Iowa ethanol plants and Iowa farmers. One of these regulations removed the indirect land use charge, which will take the average ethanol plant CI score below 50, the CI score at which plants are eligible for 45Z tax credits. Ethanol plants can lower their CI score further through energy management at the plants, as well as the corn they receive from their farm customers. For each 5-point reduction in CI score, the tax credit is another 10 cents a gallon. The farmers can participate in the 45Z tax credit program as well by using farming practices that will reduce the CI score of the corn and the CI score of the plant. These carbon credits will increase the profits of the plants, which may be passed along to local stockholders, as well as showing better corn bids for the farmers. This is a win-win for both the plants and the farmers. Ethanol plants have access to this program now without using a pipeline. Better prices with lower basis bids are already starting to show up for new crop corn using these programs. The 45Z credits are better for the local economy. The land, no eminent domain will be necessary, and the landowner will retain his private property rights. Summit's project seems to shift between sequestering carbon and enhanced oil recovery, depending on the direction the political winds are blowing. This project will be funded by 45Q tax credits, which every United States taxpayer has made a contribution. Is it necessary to also grant the use of eminent domain for a private company and take away the private property rights of Iowans? These rights are guaranteed by the United States Constitution and the Iowa Constitution. Let the project stand on its own merits and be built with voluntary easements. At this point, is Summit even sure what their project will be and where the CO2 will go? Given the changes in this project with no confirmed route, the request to amend the permit should be denied. Docket should not be consolidated, and it should not be allowed to be fast-tracked. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay Clark.
Good morning. My name is Kay Clark. We farm and are landowners in Worth County, and one of our farms will be affected by Summit's pipeline. We bought this farm in 1980, right before the beginning of the 80s farm crisis, and worked 30 years to pay for it. We've invested thousands of dollars to pattern tile it and have been good stewards of the land, which has resulted in making it a highly productive farm. Our farming operation generates jobs in manufacturing equipment, chemicals and fertilizers, seed and grain processing, as well as seasonal employees in our operation. We are an Iowa business that generates our income through personal investment, hard work, and production of a commodity. Summit's income stream will be coming from government handouts in the form of 45Q tax credits. On February 27th, there were multiple letters of support filed with the IUC. Each one was the same form letter submitted by individuals but filed by the same person. Are the individuals landowners who have property affected by Summit's actions? Did they even read the letter and allow their name to be used? Do they even understand or take time to learn about this project that will affect hundreds of Iowa farmers, our valuable Iowa farmland, and the future of agriculture? If they truly cared, they would take the time to write their own letters, which would include correct facts and how it affects them personally. Please do not put any consideration into these form letters. Every one of the objection letters were written by landowners who will be affected by Summit's pipeline. Excuse me. These letters were written honestly with careful thought and details of how they will be affected. This is our land, our family business, our future, and the next generations. After the land has been destroyed, it will never be the same. We request that the IUC not allow Summit's amendment, which is a totally different project than what was originally applied for. Not allow Summit to combine dockets, and do not allow Summit to fast track this project that denies our property rights that are guaranteed in the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the state of Iowa. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Bokelman.
My name is Ann Bokelman. I live in Worth County. I'm a landowner in Cerro Gordo County. My husband and I live less than a mile from the Hanlantown ethanol plant. We, along with 4 of our neighbors, have had to drill new wells due to their excessive water consumption. Adding CO2 capture will increase that usage. Just last year, the town of Hanlantown had to drop their well 100 feet because they didn't have water for their residents. Thankfully, Poet ponied up and helped them drill their well. Nobody helped drill my well. The proposed pipeline currently is supposed to go approximately 500 feet from my home, but because it does not actually cross my land, I receive no compensation. But we just heard about a pipeline rupture. That 500 feet doesn't protect me in the event of a failure of that pipeline. The landowner who does own the land that surrounds the acreage that I live on sent me a letter and asked me to read that. My name is Mary Colby. I live in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. My husband Joe and I own a small farm in Worth County, Iowa, near Hanlantown. It has been in my family for 4 generations, and we plan to pass it on to our children. I was born on the farm in the very house I live in and lived there for 18 years before leaving for college in Cedar Falls. Summit wants to build a pipeline through our land. We strongly oppose this plan and will not sign any agreement. This plan will have great impact on the value of our land and the rent we receive each year. In making your decision, please consider the rights of the small farm owner versus a large, very wealthy company that only wants to take advantage of us. Eminent domain is for public projects such as schools, roads, highways, and airports. It is not to make the wealthy richer. Thank you, Mary Colby.
Thank you. Colleen Tucker.
Good morning. My name is Colleen Tucker, and I'm a 5th-generation landowner from Mitchell County. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak before you. At every meeting that you have had since August of last year, I have consistently stood before you to address why eminent domain should not be used for this economic development project. Today, I would like to offer a different perspective, the viewpoint of a landowner who has voluntarily signed an easement with the company. The company initially marketed its pipeline as a carbon solution that would safely store the captured CO2 underground. Recent reports now suggest that the company will be using the CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, something that the company previously denied. Now, there are many reasons why a landowner might voluntarily sign an easement. One reason could be their genuine desire to combat climate change or to contribute to the global efforts to reduce emissions. Others may believe that the combustion engines are not being phased out quickly enough, so this is their way of helping. Because of the company's change in their business model, it is reasonable to question whether those same landowners would sign the agreement today, especially if they do not want to support enhanced oil recovery. Of course, I'm sure some landowners signed their easement purely for financial reasons, or they didn't fully understand what they were giving up when they signed the agreement. Regardless of the landowner's motivation, it is crucial to ask whether it's fair or ethical for a company to alter its business goals after agreements have already been signed. This question is particularly important when such changes contradict the original reason that may have led the landowners to enter into the agreement. This shift is not minor. It strikes at the very core purpose of the project. With these drastic changes, how can landowners reasonably be expected to trust that this company has their best interest in mind? Trust is not built on changing the project after the fact. It is built on transparency from the start. If I were a landowner who had already signed an easement, I would be consulting an attorney to evaluate my options. As the company's objectives continue to evolve, landowners are left to question whether they were given full and honest information from the outset. At some point, this stops looking like a simple project update and begins to resemble a bait and switch. A change of this magnitude should trigger a new permit application, not be treated as business as usual, because it undermines both regulatory integrity and landowner trust. I respectfully ask the IUC not to stretch or redefine eminent domain to fit this project. Please deny the requested amendment and consolidation, reject any attempt to fast track the process, and revoke their permit until a truly viable and lawful business plan is presented. Please do the right thing and listen to the majority of Iowans. If nothing else, please remember this. When landowners are being asked to make a permanent decision about their land, fairness demands that the project itself comes with permanent certainty as well. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Deb Freeman.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us this time to present our concerns. These past 3 years for me and the past 5 years for the Phase 1 landowners feels like we and our land have been held hostage. We are being oppressed by Summit CS and made to wait for a decision from the IUC. As oppressed persons, it is important to hear what the oppressors are saying about us. They have called us a small vocal group. They have said we are against ethanol, against farmers, against growing corn. We are farmers. We do grow corn. We do sell to the ethanol plants. There are 1,742 parcels and about a 700-mile route under siege by Summit. This route passes through endangered habitat areas, creeks with endangered species, and the route in Iowa has not been thoroughly evaluated or environmentally assessed. In the beginning, we only had the facts as given to us by Summit propaganda brochures and videos. We have learned to fact check all the information presented. I'm sure it is true that Summit and Rastetter will make large sums of money paid by taxpayers while giving only pennies on the dollar overall to landowners. So that part is true. Summit CS has never built a CO2 pipeline, not even 1 inch. Yet their video presented at informational meetings portrayed a pipeline built by them. Summit says there is no route for the CO2 pipeline because the current permit is for a pipeline to South Dakota and North Dakota. Because Summit now will need 100% voluntary easements, they want to change the permit and change the route. A good business model would have assessed this prior to hostage taking of Iowa farmland. There is no known project for this unproven, underregulated pipeline. Will it be for storage, for EOR, or for airplane fuel? And also unproven product. There is no public benefit for landowners or all Iowans, yet many Iowans will be in the pipeline's routed risk area. Ethanol plants have been determining their own ways to reduce their carbon scores with low carbon corn, improved farming methods, self-storage, and trucking of the carbon, all without a pipeline with no demonstrated public benefit. Summit has not gained right-of-way ordinances for railroad crossings, county road crossings, highway crossings, or the numerous rivers they will cross. Summit has failed to meet the requirements of the current permit. Therefore, the landowners and land being held hostage should be let go. Some businesses fail. Summit, after 5 years, has failed to establish itself as a beneficial entity, failed to prove it can build a pipeline, failed to show trustworthiness, and failed to meet the permitting requirements. It is time for Summit to admit failure and let this project go. Does the IUC really intend to go on supporting a business with no documented plan, no proven benefit? Please deny eminent domain for a non-public benefit project. Deny the current permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Glade.
Good morning. My name is Julie Glade, affected landowner in Wright County. In 2021, when land agents from Summit were seeking voluntary easements for their hazardous pipeline, they told us that the CO2 is safe, just like opening a can of pop, just another pipeline. They told us the CO2 would be piped through Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota to North Dakota, where it would be sequestered forever and would not be used for enhanced oil recovery. The goalposts were set. Easements were sold under these terms and conditions. Hearings were held in Fort Dodge, where landowners and their attorneys stood in line in sweltering heat so they could be wanded in through security, while Summit personnel entered through the back door with IUC staff. We heard remarks constantly from Summit and the IUC that the process was taking too long. The approval process for the largest, most controversial, consequential, and potentially dangerous pipeline project ever in the state of Iowa. Evidently, the politically connected Summit was in a hurry to get pipes in the ground so they could start profiting from the massively lucrative 45Q tax credits. And here we are today. Summit wants to move the goalposts to meet their vastly different project. They can't sequester in North Dakota and have not even announced a new endpoint. So right now, this is a pipeline to nowhere. Also, Summit plans to use the captured CO2 for enhanced oil recovery or sustainable aviation fuel. But the most concerning change lies in the massive 50% increase in capacity with the addition of phase 2, changing from a proposed 12 million tons of CO2 to 18 million tons. We need to hear how Summit proposes to overhaul their current proposed pipeline to safely accommodate these changes. How much will they have to increase pressures and pipe sizes? And how does that change plume modeling? These are all things that we have a right to know. And again, Summit wants to rush the process, proposing hearings in July for phase 2 landowners, roughly 80% of whom have not signed easements. They want the hearings condensed for each lateral, giving the Phase 2 landowners even less time than we had to defend their land, their legacy, and their livelihoods. And while you consider moving the goalpost to benefit Summit, we landowners are left in limbo. Under the threat of eminent domain, we can make no plan to develop our land to possibly make improvements like installing new tile lines. We continue to pay attorney fees because of a project we didn't ask for. We continue to spend our time, our resources, and our lives defending our property rights. We are all here today to urge you to void Summit's current permit that is now nearly twice as large, significantly more dangerous, and driven by different economic goals than the current permit. Summit needs to submit a new application that addresses the many unanswered questions that remain. There should be no consolidation of dockets, no fast tracking. The citizens of Iowa deserves nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you. Jess Mazur.
Thank you for holding this meeting today. My name is Jess Mazur with the Sierra Club Iowa chapter. And also want to thank you for giving the update on the enterprise rupture. It's something that we want to continue to keep following and kind of see how it's handled when we know that this carbon pipeline is still something that the state is considering. We strongly believe that it's time that the permit be revoked. We've been waiting 5 years. Things have changed significantly. When Summit applied, it was a pipeline to capture CO2 at ethanol plants in Iowa and to pump it up to North Dakota for permanent sequestration. Now it is a pipeline capturing CO2 in Iowa, going who knows where to do who knows what with the CO2. That is not a valid amendment request. The amendment request in front of you does not say where the pipeline is going or what it will be used for. How can the Iowa Utilities Commission make an intelligent decision to change conditions when there's so much unknown about this project? And I know I sound like a broken record. I've been saying the same thing now for like 5 months, but now the decision's here. And what we're asking you to do is just revoke the permit, number one, deny the amendment, deny the consolidation, and no fast tracking. It is absolutely ridiculous to think that Summit wants a hearing on this whole thing in July. We don't even have interventions approved yet. They're still sitting there for over a year. We have pre-filed testimony. We have scheduling conferences. There's so much of this process that the fact that Summit is wanting to have a hearing in July is an insult to you and to the landowners. That's absolutely ridiculous. We shouldn't even be considering a date. Summit's permit needs to be revoked and they can reapply and start over when they have a valid plan. So that's what my comments are, but I also have a question, and I know you're not able to answer, but when I was calculating the deadline for these filings, I know it was 60 days. I kind of, in my head, had April 17th, but I heard someone today say April 20th. So I was just hoping it could be confirmed on which day the deadline is. So thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Mazur, I would just encourage you to talk to staff if you've got questions about open dockets. So thank you. Darlene Partlow.
Again, like everyone else, thank you for listening to us. My family are targeted landowners in Guthrie County, and everything that I was going to say has already been said. So what I'm going to say to you, it's time that this commission says loud and clear, no. Make this company start over from the very beginning with a new application and say no to anything that they've asked for, no to the expedited hearings, no to the consolidation of the dockets. Just say no. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Webb.
Been sitting too long. Sherry Webb, live in Harrison County, Century Farm owners, Shelby County. For 5 years since it was originally brought up during the 2022 legislative session by Summit, The changing the rules phrase has been kicked back and forth like a soccer ball. Why would someone want to change the rules in a game? What is a word for changing a rule? An amendment. So I Googled, here's what they say, why we're changing. To enhance fun and engagement, modifying rules can make a game more interesting, more exciting, and tailored to a specific group's preferences. We're pretty tired of Summit being the specific group and their preferences. To fix fairness and balance, rules are often changed to mitigate unfair strategies, handicapping, or to fix imbalances created by superior equipment or new techniques. We are the ones fighting an unfair game with limited resources and unanswered questions. To improve safety in physical games and sports, rules are updated to reduce injury risks. But who is assuming all the risk in this project? Those of us that can't buy insurance because CO2 is a pollutant, those that live too close to a pipeline and don't have any idea what the worst case scenario is because we are not privileged to a dispersion or plume study. For adaptation and control, changing rules can make a game easier to manage, fit a specific time frame, or help manage the emotional state of players, such as reducing anxiety. Fitting a specific and shorter time frame falls right into Summit's lap. They want all this to be settled by July. But where does this help us who can't sleep at night? Where is this helping us when we start crying in the middle of the day? Does our anxiety count? For creativity and experimentation, changing rules simply for fun or to exploit how the game mechanics work, often called house rules. A company that has never built a pipeline, let alone a hazardous supercritical CO2 pipeline, and is truly unable to be transparent, is not the time to change rules for fun, to see how things work or experiment with the lives of thousands. Our family and our land are not guinea pigs. For a winning advantage, when a player's primary goal is to win, they might alter rules to create unfair advantage for themselves. Bingo, the real reason. Summit wants to alter the permit and the rules because they would create an unfair advantage for themselves, because they would create an unfair advantage for us again. This boils down to another question. Why are we playing the game? If you're playing the game to win and you change the rules in the middle of it, all the parties should be able to agree to that. First and last of all, it's not a game for us. This is our land, and for many of us, our family's land and legacy. We personally have invested over 126 years of care, expenses, time, worry, and love in our land. We are the victim of Summit's rule changes. You can make this right and do the right thing. With a pipeline to nowhere, route changes, CO2 not being sequestered, used for EOR, not a green project, pipe side changes, and who knows what else. This should not be an amendment. This should be a start from scratch, new permit application. Thank you.
Thank you. Guy Morgan?
Hello, my name is Guy Morgan from Boone County, and I think that climate change is the most important issue facing America because it will lead to the deaths of the entire human race, including every single person in this room, your families, and everyone you've ever met. To this end, Summit Climate Solutions claims to be doing environmental good, and yet is promoting the extraction of oil through enhanced oil recovery. And on their website, they said they're driven by always do the right thing, while demanding that the state gives them these people's land. That is completely unacceptable. So I urge the Iowa Utilities Commission to not do business with this two-faced company and to end this entire pipeline thing. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Cindy Hansen?
Good morning, Commissioners. Cindy Hansen. All right. Shelby County Century Farm owner, Phase 1. Summit applied for their permit and testified at the hearing in Fort Dodge that they would permanently sequester the CO2 in North Dakota. Now, because they can't easily reach North Dakota or sequestering is questionable, they want to change the route. Landowners initially wanted to consolidate dockets, and Summit fought it. Since Summit is having trouble getting voluntary easements, now they want to consolidate.
Too bad, so sad. Summit wants to fast track this process, not giving Phase 2 landowners their rights to due process. Summit accused landowners of trying to change the rules in the middle of the game, but it's been Summit constantly trying to change the rules. Trying to change landowners' long-standing business plans. Yes, farming is a business with a well-thought-out plan. Trying to change the whole basis of their permit granted by you. Not only should the IUC deny Summit the ability to amend their permit, deny their consolidation of dockets, and deny their request to expedite the process, you should pull their permit have already issued for Phase 1. If anything, Summit should be required to start over. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to mispronounce this name, but I'll try. Dan Sanchetti.
You were pretty close. In Italy, it's pronounced Tronchetti. And my grandfather came through Ellis Island and Americanized it to Tronchetti. So I'm Dan Tronchetti. I'm a farmer and landowner from Greene County. I am in Phase 1. I've been attending IUC meetings and the Capitol during legislative sessions since the beginning, August of 2021. I'm going to keep mine brief. The main point of my comments is this changing the rules in the middle of the game. For 4 years at the Iowa Capitol, Summit Carbon Solutions' battle cry was you cannot change the rules in the middle of the game. For some strange reason, we have not heard that at the Capitol this winter. Summit has gone quiet on that battle cry. And the reason is, I believe the reason is because they're coming to the IUC and asking them to change the rules in the middle of the game. Please void the current permit and tell them they need to start over. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Kathy Stockdale next, and I just want to let Elizabeth Richards know that she's after Kathy Stockdale in case she's in the overflow room.
And Kathy Stockdale, double targeted from Summit Carbon Solutions in Hardin County. And I'm just probably repeating what everyone else has said today. I think at the IUB hearing, Summit testified under oath that this pipeline the CO2 would be sequestered in North Dakota. They said they were going through South Dakota to get there. But they made poor business plans. It was not our fault that they did not get the permits in North Dakota. It is not our fault they can't get through South Dakota. Actually, they still could get through South Dakota if they wanted to. Summit has changed the whole purpose of their pipeline many times. It's hard to remember them all, from save the environment, save ethanol, use it for SAF, save the farmers, agriculture, enhanced oil recovery. What exactly are they going to do with this? They can't decide. They have to change in order to fit their plans. I was at that first the legislative session when Summit said you can't change the rules in the middle of the game. In fact, I just found it recently in a news article. They are the ones changing the rules. They have lied. They have hired out-of-state land agents, surveyor, security personnel. They've tell us they're changing their control center from Ames to Houston, Texas. They testified under oath it would be in Ames. But then let's look at the landowners. We are the backbone of agriculture. We are the producers of the corn for the ethanol plants. If this was a good idea, farmers would be lining up at the doors to sign easements. We are trying to protect the land that we have bought and inherited from previous generations to preserve it for the next generations. We are using our own money and time and energy to fight for our businesses. Farming is a business. We have many sleepless nights wondering what will happen to our farm, our children, our grandchildren if hazardous pipeline is allowed to be built next to them. One of my biggest concerns is the farming. We see consolidation in fertilizer and everything else. With Summit adding the other ethanol plants, they would now have a monopoly in Iowa and the Midwest over ethanol. And with Bruce having ethanol plants in Brazil, that's a monopoly. He will control our corn and ethanol prices. Just remember, Summit has not met the requirements for the earlier permit. It's time to deny it and make them start over if they can afford to do so. This is their poor business decision. It is not ours. We as farmers are trying to stay in business.
Thank you. Elizabeth Richards?
Good morning. Thank you for holding these meetings. My name is Beth Richards, and I am a co-owner and manager of RKR Farms LLC. RKR Farms is a diverse family-owned 1,200-acre operation located mostly in Hardin County, and it is immediately adjacent to Summit Phase 1. I am a fifth-generation landowner. Much of our land has been in our family for more than 100 years, some in excess of 170 years. Even though our land would be profoundly affected by a CO2 pipeline, we were twice denied intervention in the process by the IUC, and we would receive no compensation if to the negative consequences of the pipeline being immediately adjacent to our land. In addition to managing our farms, I am also an energy systems engineer and a natural resources management scientist. I can say with confidence that the Summit CO2 pipeline does not make sense. According to its website, the stated mission of the IUC is to ensure that reasonably priced, reliable, environmentally responsible, and safe utility services are available to Iowans. The proposed carbon oxide pipeline project is contrary to the IUC's stated mission from cost, reliability, environmental, and safety standpoints, and Summit is not a utility. The project would also use a ridiculous amount of water, which should be another critical matter of great importance to the state as a whole. And I can speak from personal experience that our water tables are dropping and we're having to spend $20,000 on new wells to water livestock. There are many well-documented reasons for not allowing this pipeline project to proceed. It was not well thought out from the beginning, and Summit has suggested many changes to its original plans as it has had to deal with reality. This includes flipping the very purpose of the project from sequestration to enhanced oil recovery. Those two actually are opposites. Furthermore, using eminent domain for this project is an abuse of eminent domain principles. In arguing for the right to take our property rights against our will, Summit has complained that the rules are being changed on them and their investments are threatened. Well, we farmers and landowners have now spent almost 5 years defending ourselves from having the rules changed on us and having our business investments threatened. So, no amendment, no consolidation, no fast tracking. I respectfully ask the IUC to revoke Summit's permit and start over. Stay true to your mission statement, which is not to pick winners and losers by pushing projects through the system for so-called economic development. Rather, your stated mission is to look out for and protect Iowans as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our list of public commenters. Is there anything else to come before the commission at this time? Oh, did we have one that we missed? Okay. Why don't you come up and state your name?
Good morning, I'm Jan Reinig. Did you see me on the list or I can just go ahead?
We may have just marked you down.
Okay, I
on
know. Last
accident.
time you called my name and I didn't, so this time we'll be straight. Thank you. It's the way it works sometimes. I'm Jan Reinig. I'm a landowner and a farm manager from Shelby County. And I grew up on a farm and married a farmer after going to college, and big, long story. I have a little bit of a different approach today. I want to tell you a bold story, no pun intended. When I was a young bride a very long time ago, my very organized husband came running in and he said, "I need you to go to the sale barn and buy a bull." Well, I had no experience in that. And so I thought about it for a second and I said, "I'm not going." And he said, "What? What? You're not going?" Well, I don't have time to give you the reasons, but I had some really good reasons. So he dropped it. He was very nice. He got on the phone, told him who he was, said, excuse me, "Send me a bull." Well, I will have to add, and I probably shouldn't, but when I saw that bull, I thought I could have done better. So anyway, but I am here with my husband's confidence in saying if she can buy a bull, she can probably do anything. Well, I lost my husband 5 years ago, right before this whole thing started with this pipeline. And it hasn't been easy. I too represent a LLC. I have a farm that the pipeline is going through. I have a adult daughter with a doctorate degree who lives in Tennessee, but we work together. We do contracts and sell grain and all of this, and she helps me very, very much. So the point I wanted to make was way back then, I had a decision. I could say, no, I am not going. Today, I really didn't want to come, but I couldn't say, no, I'm not coming. I have a responsibility to stand up for property rights. And I am thrilled with this group of people here who have also stood up for property rights. This has been a really serious situation. And one of the things I learned right after my husband had passed, I went to the insurance company. He had always done that. And I asked about the pipeline. Well, they'd hardly heard of it. And a guy ran in and he said, "Oh, no, we can't touch it." He said, "It's a pollutant." And Farm Service or one of the other companies, it isn't Farm Service, but anyway, an insurance company just called and said, "Don't touch it." Okay, now, let me ask you this. What kind of a business can operate without liability insurance? That's not in the easement. And so people are shocked when they hear this because nobody ever mentioned liability insurance. Wouldn't you assume you would have liability insurance? So to operate without liability insurance, I would either be a very foolish owner or operator. That's a big thing. So if there was something that happened, someone was hurt or injured or killed because of an explosion, I know that sounds pretty negative, but it's possible, I can absolutely lose everything I own. There is no way that I can stand up to this big money and a lawyer. Other points I wanted to make really fast is that if I don't stand up today, this is why I came, for property rights, that opportunity will be over. These property rights are really serious. So another thing is, how are we writing Iowa's history? Are the history books in 2026 going to say Iowa property owners gave up, they lost their rights to property? Or will it say way back then they defended their rights for property? So thank you for listening.
Thank you. Did we miss anybody else? I'm just going to check. Okay. Is there any other business from the other commissioners to come before us? You do? Go ahead, Commissioner Burns.
Just as we announce some new employees, I just thought it'd be appropriate to also recognize the fact that Chair Martz was confirmed by the Senate here in the last month as the chair of the IUC. So it's not an easy task to go through that process. So just wanted to recognize the fact that it's official. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm also glad that that process is over. So, but appreciate that, Commissioner Burns. All right. Thank you everyone for coming to this meeting. Our next meeting is scheduled to be 9 a.m. on Wednesday, May 20th. Information on that meeting, the agenda, the virtual link will be available on the Commission's website and on our hearing and meeting calendar. We do have a scheduling conference following this meeting, and we're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to reset and make sure everyone has a chance for a break before we reconvene in the hearing room for docket number E-22544 for a scheduling conference.